Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another episode of the ABJ Podcast, episode 25. We are climbing up that ladder. Only been doing this since October, 25 episodes in. It's been a journey. But before I get into my guests or anything like that, we got some housekeeping to take care of. Links for me, if you want to support, are all below. I'm not going to go through the whole spiel. You've heard it before. There's Patreons, there's merchandise, there's all that cool stuff that you can use to support. Links below for that, as well as my guest, and as well as any shows you can catch me at in this next upcoming months. So that's what the first one I want to get up here. Let's get rid of this slider real quick because it blocks everything. Yep, and we're gonna put a StreamYard comment up. First thing is gonna be Night of Steel for Saturday, February 11th at the Falcons Nest in 403 Hudson Valley, Mayfield, Pennsylvania. Doors at 6, bell time 7:30. Front row, I believe, is sold out. General admission still available. And this is a collaboration between High Ground Pro Wrestling, brand new High Ground Pro Wrestling, and Smash Master Wrestling. And it's going to be a benefit show for Adena Steele and Philly Mike Swanson. Their links are below. You can show them love and support. They have subscription services as well as merchandise, or just follow them on social media and show them some love and tell them you're thinking about them and wish them both speedy recoveries. And then I have more shows this month coming up. I'll be in Nutley, New Jersey next weekend. That show is sold out. I'll be in Rio Grande, Jersey in the week after that on the 25th. And then two big shows coming up. One's going to be in March 18th at the in Philadelphia. So if you want to head to Icons, go see the con. Great names there. Leave the con when it's done. Walk a couple blocks, doors, bell time at 4 o'clock. Come see some great high tension wrestling, Spring Break 93. That show will be over. You can walk back 3 more blocks to Icons and catch 2 amazing wrestling shows in one day. You can't beat it. And then Smash Master Wrestling's Uncle Massey's 40th birthday will be Saturday, March 5th. I'll be at that event as well. So come out, support your local independent wrestling, and have a lot of fun, man. There's a lot of cool stuff happening on the scene, and you should definitely come and show support. But without further ado, let's bring in my guest here for this episode. You see it in the title. You've seen the photos. The dude's jacked. He's killing the game. J.S. Michaels. What's going on, brother?
ABJ, the ABJ Podcast. I am honored, sir, to be on your podcast. And I hope I can add some non-wrestling flair to your podcast as well, because for a long time I haven't been a wrestler. So that's interesting all in of itself.
Yeah. So you did start off in this scene as you were telling me, as a backyarder?
Kind of. So I was in high school in 1997, so this might also be a first. I'm probably your oldest podcast guest. I just turned 43 last month. I turned 43. So proudly 43 years old. So
you look great. I wish I was as jacked as you were 43. I'm a fat slob.
Takes a lot of work, man. It's a lot of sacrifice, and not different than what everybody puts into being the wrestling business to begin with, right? You sacrifice all day, every day, man, even to just get this whole thing rolling. But to talk about 1997, I was in high school, started working at McDonald's. So McDonald's is actually the birth of Valley Championship Wrestling, and that is the birth of a lot of the things you see today in wrestling in Northeast PA. So it all started when I was working at McDonald's and I heard a bunch of kids in Old Forge High School, 1997 class of 97 graduate. We all decided to do wrestling in the backyard. Actually, they had started it and I joined it. And there were a few names that you might know today that are still going that were part of that federation. And it was called, now get ready for this, the most backyard name ever, Extreme Hardcore Championship Wrestling.
Extreme Hardcore XX69 Backyard Bloodbath.
Squared, right?
Yeah, 90s, baby.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And so
everyone drew those cool S's, that were all the cool S's. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I do. Yep. Yeah. Because we were all, everybody that was teenagers in the 90s came up in the 80s. So we were all a little bit edgy rock to begin with. Mm-hmm. So we had to put that extreme, super, mega hardcore. And then ECW, of course, didn't help. I mean, that's where, we all wanted to be like ECW and Attitude Era, right? So wrestling in backyards to what ended up being, when I officially looked this up on the internet, underground wrestling. So how do you bridge the gap between underground and backyard wrestling, right? Well, we trained. EHCW was this very small group, and then we had another group from Sweet Valley called Valley Championship Wrestling, who came in and scouted our shows and essentially liked a bunch of our talent. And they're like, we put on these shows in backyard in Sweet Valley. Cool. We'll come and wrestle for you. Then we got a building. So now we couldn't. It was getting away from backyard because it literally wasn't in a backyard. We also had a little bit of training. So there was a dude named Jet Jaguar who trained. It was one of the founders of VCW in Sweet Valley. I think his sister dated this Jet Jaguar dude, and he learned all the bumps. So we started learning the bumps that way. So that's how we kind of went from backyard to underground. And I'll pause because I'm sure there's a few things you want to ask about that too.
Yeah. So when you transition from backyard to a school and start learning that aspect, is there blowback? It's like, get out of here, kids, you're backyarders, you're not welcome, or do they bring you in so they can teach you the business the proper way? Like, is there a barrier there at that point in time in the early stages?
So there wasn't a school. There was Larry, Adam, Steve, and Keith and John, who all got trained by this dude who passed down his knowledge on how to bump, how to do certain moves. And then they taught us them. And before you know it, we had our first show in 1999 at Cafe Metropolis and Cafe Metropolis in Wilkes-Barre. And we drew pretty good. We only had 3 matches. And pop quiz, and you won't be able to answer this, but take a guess. What wrestling personality that you're very familiar with today was my first match in Valley Championship Wrestling?
Wrestling personality I'm going to take that as a hint. So I do know a little bit. I believe you came up with Diamond City. They were part of that early stages, right? Eric
Not
and Brad.
The first stage.
Not the first stage.
Nope.
I know Pete had some time in that area too. Pete DeLong. So is that your answer, Pete?
It is Pete. Yeah,
love Pete.
Was he was a big fan of Insane Clown Posse growing up, and
he almost got a tattoo on his back. Yeah,
that's right.
We talked about in the episode.
He had chains and green hair, and his current wife was also his valet, Sarah. So very cool. And Pete was my first match in Valley Championship Wrestling, which then kind of exploded. Now you talk about the blowback. Oh, there was blowback a little bit from our neighbors in Hazleton, which were also known as the Wild Samoans, WXW. And it's funny because we were big fans of them. We would actually go to their shows, and we formed a fan club called the Snapmare Fan Club. So 19 of us would go in, populate most of our shows, and pop only for Snapmares, just for the hell of it. We just like going there, and we like to interact with their folks. But if you ask them back in the day, even if you ask Trotsky, like, yeah, they were fucking backyarders. Like, that's how we started. But
it was I feel like I get the stigma, right? So like, when you're running a company and you have to go through everything through the state and you have to go through everything in the proper channels and you have to spend money that realistically you probably shouldn't have to spend as a wrestling organization. And then you have backyard kids who are kind of circumventing the process and not paying for training and not paying for this. And they're just kind of doing it on their own way. I can see the blowback a little bit. And, but I feel like that those organizations should try to talk to those kids like, hey man, like, we like what you do. Let's bring you in and train you properly instead of like becoming outcasts. You know what I mean? Because most backyarders, I'm going to assume, are like, the punk rock kids who are like, listen, I can't afford $400, $500 a month to go to your school. I'd love to. I would love to be a part of the Wild Samoans, but I just can't afford it, man. I just can't. But it's still my dream, and I want to chase this dream.
Yeah, we weren't rich kids by any means, so we couldn't afford whatever they wanted to charge, nor could we afford to drive to Hazleton to train. And then, like, we kind of got to the point where we're like, screw you and screw what you're doing. Like, we respect you, you do your thing, but we don't want to be a part of that. We want a revolution, right? So in some way, we were inspired by ECW, and we were ring crew for ECW on one of the shows or a few of the shows up in the Kingston Armory. And we got to go backstage, and Balls Mahoney would watch our stuff and give us pointers and tips. So we felt pretty cool about ourselves. And then we drew like 300. Like, we packed Cafe Metro wall to wall with people. Now, granted, the tickets were $3, and we used to really heavily ticket, flyer all the shows that they used to do there at Cafe Metropolis. So, obviously we had a good street team because it was us. We were cleaning up after the shows on Saturdays, putting together the ring, which was their stage, bringing it forward, putting on the posts on Sundays, and then having our shows once a month. And man, like, the fact that we drew that much. And then there was this other kind of event that happened. We had I think it was one of the, and I promise name drops of people nobody will even know and people that people do know today. There's a dude named referee Dan Mills. And I think Dan Mills' cousin worked at I think it was the FU Arena then, the First Union Arena, which is now Mohegan Sun Arena. Well,
Mhm.
WCW had a show there, and they left behind their entire format, scripted promos, how to run a show. I wish I had the copy. I don't even. Maybe somebody does. I never. Maybe Frankie Nardone, Frankie Angelini, our local historian for VCW has a copy, possibly. But it showed us how to run a professional show, and that's how we did it. We had formats moving forward. We had promos, and then we had a lot of rehearsals, right? So I know back in the day, it was a lot of calling it on the fly, not a lot of we're going to go out there and we're going to run through the script.
Yeah,
Well,
no Savage
no.
Steamboat where he's calling you at 4 a.m. Walk me through 7 through 15 one more time.
Now, I did have a tag partner who was heavily into that, but everybody else not so much. And then we started to do these like rehearsals, so almost like a theater, right? We're going to do these staged fights. We're going to practice certain moves a couple times a week, and then we're also going to we're going to critique each other. No, you got to go back and change that. You got to change that spot. So it was a little bit more choreographed as we moved into like the probably 5th, 6th, 7th show. Because we realize more people are watching. Like we need a more crisp product. We want people to really like our brand. And we ended up getting a following of, and for indie standards, indie standards today, it's pretty good. We probably average about, somewhere between 150 to, 75 to 150 people a show. So not too bad.
As a backyard company that now has a venue at this point in time in the 90s, you're putting more effort into most companies that are trying to run today.
Yeah, right?
It's crazy to think about. Like,
we had a group of 50 people involved, from the people that sold merch. People pressed shirts, VCW shirts. They'd go to the local thrift store, buy a bunch of marked down shirts, and then press the VCW logo on them manually. We had website people. We had all kinds of folks involved. So top to bottom, we were a company, and we were a bunch of like 19, 20, 21-year-old know-nothings just starting from scratch. So now we're really like, we want to make this shit succeed. This is us. And I think I carried that personality with me the rest of my life after that. And skipping ahead, that's why I'm involved with Smash Master Wrestling right now, because it's grassroots. We're going to do this a different way. We're still going to wrestle, but we're going to put on our own flair and our own touch. And so, VCW to me was, it was huge. And it ended up, we actually had a VCW indie show, like an officially licensed indie show. Now, y'all heard the craziness of Rock and Rebel and the unfortunate thing that happened with his family and him and all that stuff. We used his license. Like he somehow we politicked. We had people who were good marketing people, and he came and put on the show. Steve Corino defended the NWA title belt on that show.
Wow.
Against Danny Rose. Ruckus was on the show.
Didn't you just have to put Rebel in a match? Didn't he have a license and a ring or something? And then he as long as you booked him, he would let you use it.
Yep. And Steve Corino, he brought his own referee. So not only did you have to pay Corino, you had to pay Mike Keener too. So that was funny. We learned a lot about the business in a very short amount of time at that point. Now that's when I kind of was like, I don't like the way the actual indie business works. Like, this is weird. Like, there are people on our show that I don't know, that I don't, they're not part of our family. It was strange. But then we ended up going back into Club Home Base in Wilkes-Barre, and we ran a few more shows until some other stuff happened. Ultimately, we got shut down. We weren't following rules, so we were canceled by the powers that be in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's usually what happens.
Yes, sir.
That's unfortunate, man. I had a whole talk, and I definitely want him on someday, Trotsky, about how he went through that whole system, and he's trying to change the mindset of in professional wrestling and how it's treated as a sport. You know what I mean? And I do get that, like, working PA and Jersey are two different animals, right? Like, if I know that you're gonna do a wrestling match, right, and you fall and hurt yourself at a PA show, you're probably good. I mean, we have a doctor on site. Like, that stuff is comforting. But like I watched this one match where this guy did a 450 from the top rope to the outside, missed the table completely, smacked his skull on the ground, completely broke his skull, and had to be life flighted. He still wrestles to this day. But like, I said, where did this happen? He goes, PA. I go, man, if that would have happened in Jersey, you'd have been dead. You'd have been dead. Like,
sure.
there's really nobody there to like make sure you're cool or make sure if something goes wrong, you're protected. And they go crazy in Jersey. Like they'll jump off anything you hand them. But it's just like, so I do understand that aspect of an athletic commission and having a doctor and stuff, but I don't think you should have to pay an athletic commission to run a show or have a license and stuff. Like I don't know, man.
It's just another mafia in Northeast PA, right?
Exactly.
We all know a guy who knows a guy, and we also know the athletic commission very well, especially after.
Dude, even doctors sometimes you show up, you're like, "That's the doctor," and they're like, "Yeah." I'm like,
"Hey, it's Dr. Paulie," you know. Yeah.
I won't say the promotion, but we were at a show, and there was a spot where a kid jumped from the inside to the outside, and landed on his head, neck, and back. He was fine. He got up and finished the match. But that doctor didn't even flinch. He was just like, "Wow, that was cool." I'm like, I want to get up and go check on him. And the doctor was just like, "I'm getting paid. I'm sitting in this chair. I ain't moving." You know what I mean? So like, there's different weird things. But yeah, it's PA is very interesting. But yes, so that venue you guys ran at, is that still an active venue? Is that still something that's being used?
So we ran in Cafe Metropolis, and then we were kicked out because allegedly we put a hole in some wall that a band did the night before. So then we had to find Club Home Base. It was like just a huge like warehousey kind of venue. We were on the first floor at that point. And then eventually when we came back and tried to do things a second time as Valley Wrestling Alliance, we wrestled on the top floor. And then they got rid of the
ring up there. That would have been great.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And they actually, Joey Davino, Joe Trichel, he promoted a lot of shows as like just hardcore bands and all kinds of stuff. Like Posse Fest, I guess, was a really big thing. And I was never into that kind of music, but I guess they drew like a ton of people. So when we weren't wrestling there and the guys weren't wrestling there, they were basically pulling in people to do music shows. And, you know, again, we had an entranceway that doubled as, you know, a stage for bands. And we were used to that by then. We had it down on how to build it. It was probably constructed in like 2 weeks or less. And then they were up and running. And unfortunately, that didn't last either. In the middle of all this, though, some of us actually did get trained. Okay, but we didn't go to school because there weren't any, right? There wasn't Chikara yet. There wasn't a solid Ring of Honor training academy yet. So we somehow stumbled on Phil Stamper and Rosh. So Phil started, you know, he took
the president of independent wrestling.
The president of independent wrestling. He was an RA or RD at Misericordia University in Dallas, Pennsylvania, out past Wilkes-Barre. And he took a liking to us and he started to teach us stuff. He took us to this little, I don't even know what to call it, in Allentown on Chew Street in Allentown. It was right after the Fullerton Ave exit. And we used to love it because it was really close to the Sandman's real name, James Fullington. We're like, Fullerton, this is meant to be, right? So a couple of us would go a couple times a week and we get trained by Phil. He would take us through the paces and learn, here's how you really do bumps and here's how you call spots. And then we also had actually Trotsky come out a couple times and help us too, right? And he put us through the really like, nope, get up, do it again. Nope, get up, do it again. Like the tough love that came with Trotsky and WXW training, which was awesome. And we needed that a little bit because we kind of needed that chip knocked off our shoulders, right? So a couple sore necks, a couple sore heads. We were sore. We barely, you know, I remember like driving off the road a million times trying to drive home from Allentown to Old Forge in Joey's car. It would be 4 or 5 of us. We're like, we're barely awake. And then this is where everything gets weird. And there are a lot of synchronicities in my stories, even today. And even when I left pro wrestling, I never left pro wrestling because of these things. But there was this other guy who came in who I think it was Phil Stamper hooked this up. And his name was Lightning Mike Quackenbush, right? So there was no Chikara yet. There was us getting trained by Lightning Mike Quackenbush. And then there was this other group of people who I came to know were some of the originals of Chikara that also got trained by Lightning Mike Quackenbush. So he taught us a bunch of stuff. He taught us some lucha stuff, and he prepared us for our that indie match that we were just talking about to go back to. He's the one who taught us how to do that kind of style of wrestling and how to like really play the crowd. And, you know, he has this whole way of teaching about like, you got to crescendo and it's like, you got to build the crowd up and build the crowd up, but boom, and then bring him back down. Like he had that passion for the story of wrestling. And I think that's where a lot of us got.
Did he teach you the Forbidden Chikara special?
No, because there was no Chikara. I mean, we might have unknowingly taught him that. I don't know.
I just
So
like that storyline. He knows the move. He knows
yeah,
how to get out of it.
and I like to say that maybe we kind of made him want to be a wrestling trainer. Maybe we had some influence on that. I didn't read his book, but he might like make half a sentence mention. I'm only half kidding here. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. Maybe we had
It's
some influence.
Dude, if you look at the Northeast scene, right, and you look at like the people who came out of here and the people who worked here and like places like WXW and Shikara and the Sanctuary and all these places, there's moments where they take themselves seriously, but then also you look a lot of the talent and you look at the ones who are like our bright spots as talent, and they're also the ones who don't take themselves super seriously and
Yeah.
they can do the corny stuff and the entertaining stuff and they're the ones who last the test of time because yeah, they're not always jumping off high things and breaking their bodies and doing crazy things, but they can have a funny squash match or they can have a funny bit or skit or develop a character that's going to help them stay relevant for a while. And that's kind of the wrestling that like whether people want to like it or not. And I know the old heads of the world, like the Cornettes, say they hate it, but you know what I mean. Like, but
Yeah.
that's what is fun about the professional wrestling scene, and so much of that came out of the Northeast area. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
every time I see best friends on TV or I see like stuff like that, you're like, that's like Northeast wrestling all over it. Like that came from our area. You know?
It really did, and even more so than some people might know that are listening. So, the best friends. Hey, Orange Cassidy, name drop. He was part of a group that Rosh brought into our group. So it
Mhm.
was him and Lucky and Danny, Dan Champion, Lucky 13. Like they all
I almost wore
joined
my
from
Dan
this day.
Champion shirt for this podcast as well.
My
I,
old
I was
tag team
going
partner.
through my shirt and I almost grabbed the damn champion, but the Prince Ahmed was on top.
Amen.
The Dan Champion one's tie-dyed, so it just stands out in the
Yeah.
pile. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad to
He's
see
such
that.
a sweetheart. Such a sweetheart
Yeah,
guy.
and they're all great guys, right? And that was the thing. It was like in a good indie fed right now, you have to have a good locker room. And we had a good locker room for the most part. There was some politics that happened. Of course, not everybody in a group of 50 to 75 people is going to like each other. That's just not going to happen. So you can't, just not going to happen. But for the most part, everybody got along. And it was just really cool after the fact to see these, to see Orange Cassidy on TV, to see the former New Jersey Independent All-Star, the former JC Ryder, right? It was amazing. And, I'm going to go on a limb here and tell the world this, and maybe I shouldn't because I don't know, somebody will hate me or whatever. But I have nothing to lose. I'm 43 and I'm here in this for whatever. If you go and do a YouTube search for NAW backyard, you may find some gems in there when it comes to some of the current wrestling talent here and from New Jersey. So, just saying.
So where would they search this?
So YouTube, you want to look
Okay.
for NAW.
NAW.
Yeah. So you'll find some interesting things if you dig for a little bit. But we originally, me and a few folks drove up to NAW. Actually, Rosh told us that this was an indie fed that we were working with. And it was more backyard than what we were doing at the time. So we were just kind of like, screw it, we'll do it anyway. I mean, we were in Grandma's backyard. There were, 7 fans. But we had fun and we really liked everybody there. And so we brought them aboard. And yes, and Eric Pinhat says we are still family today. We're all family. All these people I'm talking about, like we're still connected, and that's the cool part.
Yeah.
So in case you want to know what happened after that, stuff got shut down. I started to go do indies. Now Rosh hooked me up with, he had this teen icons concept. Like, you guys are gonna be, like Beverly Hills 90210 meets wrestling. And so it was me and Showtime Sean Sheridan. And we got thrown right into it. So imagine doing this undergroundy stuff. And then now you're being shipped off to Jersey, wrestling some guy that looks like The Rock. And he thinks, nice guy, Ralph Soto was his name. I can't even find it. By the way, internet back then sucked. I can't find a record of this card anywhere. And then shipped off to Jersey Championship Wrestling and Jersey All Pro Wrestling. So back then, those were the big bigs. And I know JCW became GCW and all that stuff. But like to be on cards, to be that close to almost being on cards with Bryan Danielson and with CM Punk, because I was about a month away from that when I quit.
Oh,
And now I look back and go, what was I thinking?
there's a match of Trotsky wrestling Daniel Bryant,
Yes.
and he
Yes. And
clotheslines the shit out of him.
yeah. And that was around the same time, right around the Young Lions Cup. I would have been in or on the Young Lions Cup card. Yeah. And by the way, I just want to do another plug for the ABJ podcast. This
There it is.
official
There's the
ABJ podcast water bottle. Get it at somewhere.com.
I have one of these for you as well next show.
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, it was a wild ride. And after all that Indy stuff happened, I hated Indy because again, it wasn't my family and it wasn't our thing that we were creating anymore. It was somebody else's stuff. There was sometimes no reason people were fighting people. And I was like, I'm done. I have no money. I can't keep traveling out. I need to do something different with my life. And there were a few reincarnations after that of the whole Valley scene. Didn't last long. Rich Howe ran a couple different federations. We were trying to figure out what they were all called, but he brought back a Valley Championship Wrestling at some point. He brought back Pride of Wrestling, Anthracite Wrestling. They had, Brody Lee on one of their shows, which was pretty massive, right? It was just crazy times. And then stepping away from wrestling for the longest time was interesting. It was a complete life change.
So once you stepped away, what did you start doing?
I dove in headfirst into my degree. So I went to college at ESU. So in between VCW dying and then some of this other stuff, the comebacks trying to happen, I went to ESU for computer programming, basically. And I had taken a couple years of that already at Penn State and then University of Scranton. But I was so into wrestling, I did so shitty at the University of Scranton. I think I had a scholarship and I almost lost it. I did so bad. I didn't care. I'm like, that's not what I want to do. I want to make VCW succeed. So eventually I went back to school. I became the party guy. I was vice president of my fraternity. I met some of my best friends that I have today that aren't in wrestling whatsoever. And I partied and got a degree. And then I got to the point where they wanted me to graduate. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I don't want to graduate. I like being here. I'm finally coming out of my shell. Very shy kid.
You're Van Wilder.
Yes.
I'm gonna be a 15-year kid from
Amen. And so I graduated the cybersecurity degree because I wanted to stay one more semester. They're like, take a couple classes, you'll get a whole different degree. And I'm like, great, because I don't want to program the rest of my life. That's torture. Chain me to a keyboard for 2 days straight, and then I'm like trying to make a dog hop on a screen or something. I'm like, no, that's definitely not for me. So cybersecurity degree. Come back to Northeast PA, get a couple jobs. I did cybersecurity for a warehouse, manufacturing company in Moosic, Pennsylvania. And then I got an interview with a life insurance company in the Lehigh Valley. So there goes my career. Everything became cybersecurity. So I worked my way up from entry-level dude all the way to now I'm a head of cybersecurity assurance, which is a hacker team. So that's the last almost 15 years of my life.
Wow.
With no wrestling.
Now, do you still watch the product? Do you still follow the indie scene, to see what people are doing, or did you completely wipe your mind from all wrestling altogether?
So when I went to school, my whole thing became my fraternity. So I jacked out of everything. I didn't see the era that came after the Attitude Era in WWE. I don't know what happened.
Ruthless
aggression. Yeah, I didn't watch that. ECW came back and died, and through WWE branding. So didn't watch that. I didn't watch any wrestling then. And I heard about things going on. I heard about Chikara. I heard about one of the other founders of Extreme Hardcore Championship Wrestling, Drew, Matt Turner. I heard him going through the Ring of Honor Academy and getting to do some cool stuff. And I kind of watched from afar, and I would get, random messages from people from time to time, keeping me, up to date and just really seeing things explode. So I was I really marked out for the things my people were doing, totally marked out, but didn't pay attention to the rest for the longest time. So, yeah. And then I would a little bit, I'd almost get pulled in. I'd get messages from Danny, I didn't get into it much, but Dan and I were tagged. We're also the teen icons after me and Sean Sheridan had split up. Me and Dan would ping me. And when I moved to Lehigh Valley, they live across the bridge near Phillipsburg, New Jersey, some of them. So it would be hey, come out with us. And it turns out it was Dan's birthday. He was out with, obviously Orange Cassidy, Eddie Kingston, Chuck Taylor. And I'm like, I had no idea who these guys were at that time. And if I did, I would have gone. And I'm like, shit, there were times when they're pinging me, hey, come train over at Jakarta. Nah, I'm done with wrestling, guys. I have a fiance now, I'm
Yeah,
trying to do
you
this
would have walked. You would have
cybersecurity.
walked in the door, and like all those names, and Claudio would have been there, and Brody, and
I would
oh
have
my
lost my
goodness,
mind. Well,
yeah,
maybe I wouldn't have because I wouldn't have known who they were.
dude. We're when we right before. Well, actually, it was on this channel. Well, every now and then we go back and review like an old show, and I'm from like the Northeast area where it's more of a like the school county side. So the other side of the mountain from us is like Pottsville. So I'm in the so Pottsville's kind of like my hangout spot. And there was Goodfellas Club, and they ran a Chikara show, and we watched the show that happened literally 15, 20 minutes from my house that I didn't know existed at the time. And then you go back and you watch, you're like, holy shit, dude! Like all these people who are now on my TV wrestled in a building that's 20 minutes from my house, and I never knew it existed. Like that's what I'm telling people now. Like enjoy your independent wrestling scene because you never know. You never
Yeah,
know.
it's crazy. Like I never realized, like, name drop again. Like I was going back and trying to figure out all my matches, and I was like, oh, we used to wrestle for this federation called GBW out near Hanover, not Hanover near Wilkes-Barre, but Hanover near, like past Harrisburg. I'm like, Apollo Crews was on this show. John Moxley was on this other show. I'm like, holy shit! Like who would have thought? It's crazy. You never know.
Did you ever hang out with because with Dan Champion? Did you ever hang out with Ultra Manus?
No.
No, that guy's awesome. I love Ultra Manus Black.
My coolest hangout was the Iron Sheik. I know that show I mentioned where I wrestled the guy that looked like The Rock. Iron Sheik was there with the 6-pack of Budweiser and weed, sitting
Love
outside
that.
the door and just like smoking and telling stories. The
You
main event
smoke my
happened.
way to Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, surreal.
Yeah.
Surreal, but that's the thing. You don't know who you're standing next to across the ring from, in the locker room next to, just bullshitting with backstage for the couple hours it takes to get to the show when you're not wrestling.
My craziest wrestling moment is we're at Hamburg for the Legends of Icons festival, and we get there early, and I'm nervous because it's like I'm still early into like having like I think it's my first con that I'm ever a part of, and right before the show for my anxiety, I go and I take a couple whacks, we'll say, and I go in. I'm like, all right, I'm chill, I'm calm, and I'm sitting there, and we're setting up our table, and I get a pat in the butt, like someone pats me on the butt, and they're like, "What's up, baby? How you doing?" And I go, "My turn, Jimmy Hart, just Jimmy Hart," and he just stops and has a full conversation with me, like we've been best friends for 15 years. Yeah. And then he walks away, and I look at my friend Brian. I'm like, "Did that just happen? Did Jimmy Hart just stop?" Like those moments, like you try to be like, I'm in the business now, but then you meet like someone you watch since you're a kid, and you're like, that's crazy. Like it's just, I don't know, it's neat. It's a fun business, man.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I'll tell you what, and since we're getting into the business, one of the reasons I had to come back to wrestling was, I wanted to help out Rosh, and I definitely wanted to be involved somehow. Cybersecurity could take a lot out of you from a mental health perspective. All you're doing is solving difficult problems all day, trying to figure out ways to do things with very little people, because those bad actors, the attackers that hack stuff, they have so much money and time. They have their own corporations. Meanwhile, you have your little rinky-dink team that's just coming up trying to learn cybersecurity and on the fly to defend all this stuff, and it takes everything out of you. So I got to a point from a mental health perspective where I couldn't get out of the matrix ever. So I'm like, I need to slowly distance myself from this and do something different. And the second thing that kind of brought me back into it all, and again, all of those things we've talked about, super, super exciting, but it's this. What the hell is that, John? Right? COVID. So I got COVID over 2 years ago. And when I did, it wiped out my smell and taste. And then a few months later, it distorted my smell and taste, and it's never come back. So
what?
I have to smell these essential oil sticks multiple times a day. This is what I wear when I eat. So if you see me, this is why I don't eat in public usually, because I look like a clown. And I know I shouldn't beat myself up like that. I get it. But It's really hard. So I've got this like weird disability that disconnects me from people more. So now as I'm reclaiming my life from cybersecurity, I can't be a normal person again. And wrestling gives me a way to kind of be normal, to connect with people, and it not have to be, excluding myself in a corner to eat or just make me feel weird. And the wrestling locker rooms are so accepting. They don't care who you are, what background you're from. a lot of the folks you meet are just like, yeah, we're in this together. We're all just a bunch of little kids inside, and we're just gonna
Mm-hmm.
have fun, dude. And like to be able to come back into that and survive, corporate America for 15 years, survive, be able to shift from focusing on my disability and what I can't have to focusing on the present has been so therapeutic for me, like just insanely therapeutic.
We have a little bit of common ground here. So I also have a disability. My body doesn't produce collagen, so I have that's called EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So I'm extremely hypermobile, have hypermobility, and I dislocate, and I have really bad arthritis and joint pain and all that stuff. Real, and I was diagnosed at 13, and all I knew growing up was sports and athletes and wrestling and basketball and soccer. And as I got older, it just I just it started fading away. So podcasting essentially led to me getting away from using my body and using my mind and my voice, and that led me to professional wrestling. But wrestling, once again, is an avenue where I was obsessed with as a kid, and I would love to get in there and do things, but I can't. But because it's so accepting, and there's so many roles you can do within the professional wrestling world, I can sit at commentary, I can sit and ring a bell, I can be backstage and interview somebody, I can sit on a podcast and talk to talent, which I agree with you, man. Like, and especially this 570 Northeast wrestling family, man. Like I'm fortunate within a year and a half, I've got to travel 3 different states and work for probably 6 or 7 to 8 different companies. But man, there's something about this area where like where I know an Eric and a Brad are going to be there, or a Pete, or a Rush, or an Alex Watt, or a Kit Raff, or an AJ Evers, or and I can go on and on and on and on. If I know they're in the locker room, that's like going to a family reunion you wanna be at, you know what I mean? Like, and it's
Yeah.
so welcoming because everyone loves you and everyone wants you to be there, and it's more than just like, the fans out in the crowd are there for a wrestling show, but we're also there to entertain, but, like, we feel like a team going out and doing it, and that's just an environment it's hard to replicate in different wrestling companies and different locker rooms.
Yeah, I mean that's why we do it. And my fiance Lindsay, she helps out a lot and with Smash Master, she's helping with production, but she's also she helps the chief. We call her the chief financial officer. She takes the tickets and makes sure that everybody gets their money. Rosh gets his money. She's kind of like did not realize what this was like behind the scenes, and nobody does. And it's easy to get addicted to when you realize you're entering a
Mhm.
family like with no pretenses, whether you have 85 years of experience, you come from the backyard, you're trained, you're not trained, you're just learning. Everybody's trying to be something and just have fun. And it's really supportive. And I saw that immediately what backstage at Smash Master. Like the culture, I mentioned culture, it's insane. It's insane. No, we can't afford to pay Orange Cassidy to come in, and wrestle, or we can't bring on folks like PPW do. We just don't have that, or PPW, or even at what Alpha Juniors do now. They have connections that we don't have. They have money we don't have. So what's really really critical is that we have the passion together, and everybody in the back wants this to succeed, and just that got infectious too. And I'm like, yes, Rosh, I will help you out every single way I can. I want to help everybody out. um, and it's just
I
amazing.
will say this from a standpoint, and it might get me heat, it might not, but I've worked for those companies, and I've been backstage at those companies, and they're great, and I loved the opportunities they gave me. Oh, he just got disconnected for a second. Your microphone or your camera just shut up. Let's see. Can you hear me? Hold on, we'll remove him until it pops back on. Um, I'm not sure if you can hear me, so I'll hold my thought. But guys, real quick while I'm killing time here till he pops back on. Yeah, dude, check the links below. Make sure you support myself as well as my guest. We have a lot of cool things. I know I'll just kind of go to the chat here real quick. So if you are listening to the audio, this isn't also a live stream podcast. Hard and Soft Wrestling Podcast said, how do you go live with YouTube on guests? I use a program called StreamYard. If you need help with anything, man, hit me up and I'll help you walk through how to sign up for this and do it. Can you hear me? I see you on screen, but I can't see or hear you. You might have to close it out and come back in. Um, do we watch I watch NXT, and actually later on tonight I will be doing a live watch along of NXT. So if you come back to this channel, if you like and subscribe, you can check this out. If you are watching this live via Facebook or via Twitch or Twitter. It's on all those links, so you can check them out. We are currently at 225 subscribers on the quest to 1K, so definitely those would really help out. I think he's back.
Am I back?
Yes, we hear you now.
Woohoo!
What
The good
happened?
guys win.
There's cybersecurity. They're trying to take down the ABJ podcast.
Yeah, I must be giving away like secrets or something. They're monitoring me, man. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I was gonna say before, and this is no hate to any of those companies. I appreciate all the support and love they've given me when I was backstage and stuff I do for those companies. But sometimes those companies, guys, just are there for their check, and that's clear and apparent. And if they don't get the check, they don't come back. And there's nothing wrong with that either, because sometimes getting paid and coming to work for a promotion is one thing. But I've also worked at promotions where everybody walks in with the same thing everybody walks out with the same thing they walked in with, but it's just a general passion of making art with your friends and being part of a locker room and being like, hey, we enjoy this profession and we love this business, but we also have the same common interest of making where we are right now bigger than what it is. So it's one thing to come in and take a paycheck to work for a company, but it's also another thing to walk into a company and be like, I'm working for this company to try to make this company something bigger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And honestly, that's how your ECWs have rose. That's how your GCWs have rose. That's how your CZWs have rose, and your Chikaras, because everyone who was part of that locker room was a part of that locker room, and they took pride in that locker room, and they made that locker room something bigger than it was. And it wasn't someone just walking in the door, hey, can I get my envelope? I'm going to go do a match and I'm out of here. Yeah. And that's the difference. That's the clear difference between a lot of locker rooms.
Yeah. And I always thought, like, what advice would I give younger folks looking to get into it? Don't do it for the money. Don't think there's ever going to be money there. I think the most I've ever gotten paid was like $10. Like, that's back, 2002. That was a lot.
First time I got paid, I was like, are you sure?
Yeah. got a whole 10 shiny 10, got a whole shiny nickel. It was great.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to do with the podcast. I think if I mention things, you can hashtag them, right? So if I say Joe Rogan, you can do hashtag Joe Rogan.
I think so, yeah.
Maybe
I have to go back and do all that, yeah.
Orange Cassidy, AEW, WWE, right? What else do we have to say? COVID. We talked about my disability as a result of COVID. You can hashtag COVID.
So are you slowly getting any of that back, or what is that like? How does that come about?
So it's just different distortions. So nothing tastes normal, period. Not a thing. Like coffee and poop have the same smell to me. And it doesn't smell like coffee or poop. Okay. So imagine that, but everything, like anything you're about to
That's actually a benefit for being at wrestling shows, because sometimes I almost got heel commentary, because sometimes those stinking fans or people don't wash their gear. You're immune.
Well, you don't know
your character. Your character can't. You have a wrestling character who can't smell, so they put you against like Dirtbag Dan, and you're immune to Dirtbag Dan because you can't smell him.
Don't give Rosh any ideas for the next Christmas show, okay? Because I have enough gimmicks. I don't need another. But yeah, I mean, to go back to the wrestling such a community. If you could be involved, get involved. That's one thing I always say. And for all those fans out there, people watching this podcast going, well, I'm not a wrestling fan. Yeah, but do you watch action movies? Do you like Broadway? It's all of that stuff, but live.
Are you looking for a group of friends because you don't have a friend?
Honestly,
it could be that easy. Can you make graphics? Can you help make graphics on a poster? Can you hold a camera? Can you collect a ticket? Can you? Right. There's so much you can do, and I promise you, if you get in the door doing those things, you're gonna meet a culture of people you're gonna love and cherish for the rest of your life.
Amen. And what was it? Silvio Dante quoting movie. Once I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. And that's it. Every once in a while, Rosh will be like, hey, you're doing a thing here with this and that sanctuary. And I'm like, I'm not a wrestler anymore, but I'm a wrestler now again. So I guess you don't stop learning how to ride bikes, right? But everybody who can go to a wrestling show, a local one, support them, right? Yeah. They're your mom and pop businesses. WWE, I saw NXT mentioned, they've got such huge budgets. They have a lot of choices. They have a lot of options. We're just kind of limping by. Every indie's kind of limping by, just trying to get to the next show, trying to figure out how to get enough to make it to the next show and the next show and the next show, so we can all keep living our dreams.
Yep. So NXT was essentially picked clean from ROH, and ROH was essentially picked clean from the Northeast wrestling scene, who all came from the independent wrestling backyard areas. You know what I mean?
And and we're gonna keep feeding them. Yeah, ABJ, we're gonna keep feeding them. We got talent coming up like crazy. Like when I saw,
this guy right here,
Prince Ahmed. I met him backstage. Couldn't be a nicer guy. wild man in the ring, just completely innovative. Does I remember it might have been on your podcast that I heard like he just invented a move out of nowhere on the fly.
Yeah.
Like, yes, that stuff is what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Those artists, right? MIT met backstage, really good dude.
Special.
He's a dad, he's a firefighter, and he's a wild man in the ring. Like this is the guy. If you want to watch anybody coming up, one of the talent, I shouldn't say guy because there's a lot of girls that are coming up and that are currently in Northeast PA wrestling that are going to be something big someday. But MIT, he's going to be something big. Keep your eye out.
I'm excited for him versus Kit. That's gonna be
oh boy.
a really good match. Smash Master 40th birthday party. MIT versus Kit. MIT just put on a really good match recently too with that no good, dirty, rotten scumbag Ricky Price. Hate that kid.
Another local talent.
I wasn't wearing his shirt last podcast. It was a glitch. He hacked into my camera and put it on. I was wearing something completely different.
That's amazing. Hey, Ricky Price, we're looking for some good hackers for hire. So, hit up my DMs.
But yeah, so and you also yourself have you're a little bit of a content creator yourself as well now as I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know, freaking stroke talking. You're a content creator, correct?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, this goes back to when Brad Bruno Serafini, Seraph, all of his gimmicks that he's gone through over the time. He actually had this kind of Taz version of his character. And we took a Kiss song and I remixed it, cut it up, and kind of took out all the Kiss parts and kept the guitars and stuff. So I was able to kind of just hack together stuff. I'm a DIY guy, so I don't have the attention span of a fly. If you say watch a YouTube video on how to do something, I'm done in 3 seconds. I can't do it. Mm-hmm. So figured out how to do that myself. I'm figuring out how to use the YouTube or the Instagram reels and stuff now just to get content out there. And I like being in front of the camera. I've had a camera since I was like 10 years old. My grandmother bought me a camera and I've always been in front of the camera. So I'm like, I'm going to do some stuff and I don't know if anybody watches or doesn't. And frankly, it's, no offense to everybody that watches. Thank you, but I don't care. I do it for me. I do it for me for fun.
I'm in that same boat. I mean, I definitely want to strive and make this something, but I also said like I want to make this community so I can then take my community and feed it into something else. So if I can get a couple thousand subscribers and they're all over the world and they can go and subscribe to a YouTube channel that I do commentary for or a company I pride myself in and helps them get some views and people fall in love with the same people I'm watching every weekend, that's my goal to grow my brand.
That's awesome. I'm glad you have goals. I don't know what that's like, man. I just wing it.
I have goals, but I wing it while I get there. Yeah, I'm definitely like even the wrestling business. When someone first came to me like, "Hey, can you do this?" and I was like, "Yeah, man, I've done it all the time." And then I do it, and they're like, "Yo, man, how long have you been doing it?" Oh, that was my second time ever trying that. I'm like, what? They're like, why did you tell us? I'm like, because you wouldn't have let me do it if I told you it was my first time.
Yeah.
Even though now in the wrestling business they definitely would have because they didn't have anybody else for that spot, but. But yeah, so where can people like what type of content do you make? Like what do you do?
So right now it's just kind of promotional stuff for JS Michaels. So right now it's kind of like promos, a little bit of like just quick. Here's what JS Michaels is thinking about this upcoming match. Not that I have a bunch of matches. I have an open calendar and I'm not looking to fill it. That's what I always say. Yeah. I don't mind wrestling, but I'm not going to wrestle full time. I'm old and at some point I might get hurt, even though I, keep in shape and stuff. I don't, got to pay the bills first and foremost. So, but I like just to put together stupid shit. Like JS Michaels is an idiot. He is probably a modern combination of List of Jericho, Seth Rollins, probably with a little bit of LA Knight mixed in, a little bit of Dolph Ziggler. Like he's just a dumbass, and that's all he's supposed to be. And that's okay. And he's going to have fun. But then, I said, I'm going to create another character. I'm going to do, something that's near and dear to my heart since I was, I don't know, probably 10 years old or so. I had a cousin named Jody, and she was into the hair bands well into the 90s when they weren't around anymore. And they were kind of
like hair metal. Love it.
Yeah. So she actually is a good friend of Bret Michaels from Poison, which I came to find out. And I was so fucking happy when I found that. I'm like, I can't believe it. But I spent summers with her and really love the hair band. So that's part of me. Just like JS Michaels is part of me. It's not a character. It's part of me. Well, Johnny Rocket is this new concept I'm working on. I got this ridiculous hairband wig and I do this like really bad English accent. And I am, Johnny Rocket, right? I want to wrestle as a face as Johnny Rocket, right? So I want to
Vinny Glamrock might need a partner.
That's what I was thinking. VLG and Johnny Rocket. But I think that stuff is fun, just being able to play a character. Because like even at work, there's so many rules as to how you can behave in a corporate environment. And the company I
suck
work
at those rules.
for, yeah, there's not as many rules nowadays. Like you can be yourself, you just have those corporate confines. This is my art. I can do whatever the hell I want, right? If I want to create another character on top of that, I can do that. It doesn't matter. There's nobody to tell me I can't.
Bro, if you know how every trend and style comes back, and right now we're kind of in that like the '90s, early 2000s are coming
Yes.
back, like, and everyone's into that. Like, I want to get skinny again, right? I still kind of wear skinny jeans a little bit. I can't get rid of them. But like, if like guyliner starts coming back, and I can make my long hair '80s style, and I can, you know, what I mean, like, I would 100% revert back to a hair metal guy. And I never even lived in that era. I just love that look. Like,
Yeah.
Steel Panther and Motley Crue and like all those bands that came, like the hair metal bands. I love them.
Yeah.
Love them. Van Halen, like all that stuff. I'm into it.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I'm such a big fan of the '90s and early 2000s, and really the whole 9/11 situation sent the country in a total different direction for so long. Like it's so
Yeah.
refreshing. We can come back and just start to really enjoy life and just rock out, right? So,
Yeah.
and then I mentioned J.S. Michaels. He's an extension of my character too. That I can't be at work or in the real world. He's your early version of Troll, right? He's not going to slap the fans' hands, right? And he's going to do stupid shit like over the top battle royal. J.S. Michaels. He got 2 pinfalls in an over the top battle royal. Who else can say that besides the experienced J.S. Michaels? Right?
I like when they have battle royals where you can pin or submit a guy. I think they're entertaining.
Yeah.
Macho Man tried to do it to Yokozuna and then got thrown out.
Yep.
Macho Man is historically the worst guy in a Royal Rumble of all time. He's just terrible at it. He's terrible at Royal. One of the greatest wrestlers, but he's the worst at Rumbles. Yeah. Anything else? I mean, we're getting close to the end here. If anyone is watching live and you have any questions, anything you want to add in there, please put them out there. And I'll kind of give you guys, and I'll let you be part of this as well. The rundown. So right now we have you on. Then next on this Thursday, I'm going to be two interviews back to back with Philly Mike Swanson at 3:00, and then at 5:00 Riley Crow. Then on Sunday will be Angel Metro. Then on Valentine's Day, I'll be eating some chocolates and having my dinner date with Alex Watt. The following Thursday will be with Paige. Then I'll have the boys from Welcome Back Podcast on. Then we'll be ending the month with Shelby, and then the very end of the month will be the one and only Adena Steele. So very, very exciting month. A lot of our good friends on this podcast. The entire month of March is booked. I have all of March is good to go. I have everyone booked. We're still doing 2 a week for the month of March. April is still open, but I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do 2 a week in April or if I'm going to dial it back to one a month on that. But already in the chat, not really a question, more of a statement. Shelby Waters says, I'm excited to beat you up on Saturday.
Not a chance, Waters. You see, she comes across as this like cool surfer chick type thing. Guess what? Shelby Waters is actually a heel in disguise. I've seen her distracting referees. I see the attitude there. She's going to try to cheat to win. And I'm going to do whatever I can to stop that from happening. We're going to take her surfboard, throw it in the back, and she's going to be chasing it backstage. She won't even have a chance to enter the match. J.S. Michaels is not worried about Shelby Waters.
I actually made a prediction during a Shelby Waters match because every now and then I like to throw little quirks in there to mess with people on commentary. And I knew a few people were watching that were, we'll just say, right-wing leaning politicians. So when she came out, she had all the blue like lights behind her, and she's the blue wave, Shelby Waters. And I said, the blue wave is going to be taken over in a couple weeks. And then they actually did. Like the red wave never happened. And I was like, that's because Shelby Waters won them. And I think it was like her first win too, in the ring at Sanctuary. So it was pretty funny. Hunter said, if you can give any piece of advice to a young J.S. Michaels, what would it be?
Believe in yourself, kid. Nobody believed in me. That was part of why I stopped wrestling to begin with. I didn't have somebody to tell me keep going. That was like an experienced person. People would be like, yeah, you're pretty good, and all this stuff that like in my echo chamber. But my family was like, what the hell are you doing? I dated girls whose, families and friends made fun of me for doing this. So I got pushed out because nobody believed in me. But I would have said, you can do it, man. You can do it. Keep going. Keep going. You got this. You're okay.
Yeah. And don't really listen to your outs. Like if you have your tribe of people and it's not something that everybody else is into, if it's not hurting anybody, who cares what other people think? Like
Yeah.
you're not going to sit there and tell me not one person in in their lifetime at one point in time was not a pro wrestling fan. And if you tell me you weren't, you're a liar. And if you tell me you don't like professional wrestling, but you do like other things, I'm going to say, "Oh, what do you like?" I like MMA.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, who's some of your favorite? Oh, I love Conor McGregor. Oh, you mean the guy who's trying to be Ric Flair? Okay, tell me how you don't like pro wrestling.
Yeah.
You know what
Oh,
I mean?
it's fake. It's fake.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
you like NFL, but you don't like pro wrestling? How about every single time a professional wrestler guy makes a sack or they do something, what do they reference? Pro wrestling. It's part of it's more in pop culture than people think it is. It's
Yeah.
more intertwined in our world and it's the most honestly. You want to sit there and brag about baseball and basketball? Pro wrestling is the most American thing ever created, and it's the only thing that has transitioned from America to other parts of the world and was adopted by the entire world.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is everybody, this goes out to everybody out there. Find your own group of people that will support your dreams.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the rest, right? Don't worry about the haters. They're hating because they're jealous or because they have their own insecurities. Don't worry about them.
Find yourself a Diamond City War Machine. Find yourself a Pete DeLong. Find yourself a Rosh. Like find people who are, it does help that they're from the 570, but find people who are literally like that. They're gonna tell you when you're wrong, but also lift you up when you need it and tell you when you're doing the right thing as well. And that really helps. And that's why I'm very thankful of being part of the 570 and being part of this family and this group and meeting you, man. We met at like 2 Smash Master show, and here we are, just chilling. Now we're going to bars and stuff together. It's a good time.
Absolutely. And I promised we'd talk about non-wrestling stuff when we did that. So I want to get more people to watch because this is not just a show about wrestling, a podcast about wrestling. This is about life. This is about stories. This is about watching people live their dreams and figuring out the nuances of having to wear a clip and just all the things you would never know about people. This is podcasting. Joe Rogan will drop again. I learn about people on Joe Rogan podcast that I wouldn't normally ever meet. You're going to meet so many diverse people on here doing different things. You mentioned Paige. She's not a wrestler. Paige is a phenomenal photographer, right? But you have so much to learn about her journey. Please tune in, watch. Don't just, some of you might have joined because, oh, look, it's John, right? I know him from this, and that. Watch them all. Listen to them all. Like, follow, subscribe. I know I sound like a commercial, but do it. I mean, you need to learn about people that aren't like yourselves. Open up your mind there.
My first interview was an independent horror, like he is a guy from our area who made his own independent horror movie that was banned all over the world because of the gratuitous violence that was in it. I interviewed a guy who tours all over the world as a drummer in a band. Like I'm down to interview anybody. I have had some people hit me up in the links. It's just I'm so intertwined in the wrestling community. That's where a lot of my guests come from, and we do intertwine the wrestling. But like you said, it's people. It's storytelling. It's learning about people in general. Actually, you know what? While you're here, we do have a couple minutes. Do you want a little sneak peek of March?
Let's hear it.
All right, so March, first episode, Boom Harden. Right now, he's in a tag team with Deshaun Pratt, which is another person I want to get on this podcast so bad. I love Deshaun. Then it's going to be someone we talked about on this episode. MIT will be on the podcast in March. Then we'll be having the one and only, the most entertaining, dirty scumbag in the professional wrestling world, Tommy Vex, will be on the podcast. Adena Steele, Mike Skyros. Then we have back-to-back, not together, but separate, probably the who I would say who the people who have taken me under their wing so much in this independent professional wrestling world. Eric Pinhat on the 21st, and then Brad DeMeo on the 23rd. Nathaniel Cunningham on the 28th, and then I'm ending the month. I'm like I'm ending this month, ending it with the Queen Adena, but now I'm ending March with another queen, and that's Mary Beth.
That is awesome. And that's an awesome lineup. And you're getting a good mix of talent from all over the place. You get some Smash Master folks, but also folks that are up and coming from different areas to really tell their stories. So, and what you're going to do, folks, listeners, you're going to fall in love with some of these people, and then you're going to want to go to wrestling shows because you want to see what that's all about. Like, I just met the person. What is the wrestler like? What do they do in the ring? What do they dress like? So,
and the thing is that you're not going to experience at the shows that we go to that you wouldn't at some of the other ones is these wrestlers come out from the back and they will come talk to you, the kids, and they will interact and they will be part of it. And even if they don't have merch to sell, they still come out and say hi to everybody. You know what I mean? Like it's not like the WWE when you sit in your seat, you watch them come to the ring, they go to the back, and you never see them ever again. It's a very personable experience, and you're going to have a blast. and just support independent wrestling wherever you are. Just search the show that's coming up, and I guarantee you'll go. And it's not like it was, and I'm not trying to throw shade, but it's not like it was back in the day where people were still kind of figuring things out. These people who are going through the training and doing everything they're doing now are on a completely different level of professional wrestling, and they're so entertaining and they're athletic, and it's such a good mix of the old school meeting with the new school. And that's what you're going to get at this Northeast style, where you're going to get these old school guys working with the new school guys, and they put together these beautiful works of art. And it's the best way I can describe it. But JS, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you, my guy. I cannot wait to see you on this weekend at the show. And if you are in the area, please come out once again to the A Night of Steel event in Mayfield, Pennsylvania. Once again, I'll put it up. Hudson Street in Mayfield, Pennsylvania. Doors open at 6, bell time 7:30. Come out and support Adena Steele, Mike Swanson. Come see a bunch of great matches. You're going to see a lot of really upcoming talent going to be colliding with some veterans of the world, and that's going to be the best way to see the show, is come out and see it live. I'll be on commentary as well as my buddy BP Burke, and it's going to be a blast. Anything in closing, bud? Anything else you want to plug or get out there?
Just want to say, like, follow, subscribe. Any indie talent, wrestling talent that wants advice, again, you know my story now, so I'm going to have a certain viewpoint. Happy to help. Happy to help. Fitness, nutrition, character. I love character building. Happy to help there. And then, again, come out this Saturday. So the Adena Steele Philly Mike benefit show. I will be wrestling. JS Michaels will be wrestling what he considers 6 snowflakes. So if you add all their ages up, it's probably not as old as me, but hopefully I'm not going to come out, wheeling my way in a walker. But that said, come out to the show. There's so many matches with so much different talent, up and coming, old school. And also, like, follow, subscribe. I keep saying it, I know, but come on, do it for me right now, or I'm not leaving this podcast. Like, follow, subscribe. Like, follow, subscribe.
Ross says he wants the 90210 theme again.
Oh, what are you going to book me for? You want me to be a teen icon again? You can't call me a teen anymore, Rashi. I'm a little bit old for that, but I'll try. Anyway, ABJ, thank you so much. Best of luck with your podcast. Hopefully I'll come back sometime in the future talking about some other random bag of stuff.
Doors always open, brother. It's always open. Brother. I haven't booked my first return guest yet, but I'm sure they'll start coming soon.
Yeah, at least before I'm 60. That would be great. So, that's only 10 years from now or whatever. But all good, ABJ.
An old icon.
Hey, I'm probably better at things get finer with age, right? I'm probably better today than I was 20 years ago. I don't know how, but I'm sure it's true.
If you are watching on Facebook or Twitch, please click this link here. This will take you, I don't watch it not go up on Facebook. This will take you to the YouTube channel so you can subscribe and hit those likes. It helps out so much. Once again, I know I sound like a repeating record, but like, for a while there, I had 5 podcasts on one Patreon, and then the Patreon kind of dissipated because I ended those 5 podcasts. Some people still stuck around and supported, but a lot of that helped pay for StreamYard and Adobe and gas to shows and everything. But Facebook doesn't cost you anything. Go follow my page on Facebook, like, share, all that stuff that goes on Facebook. I'm already up to $70 for the month because Facebook monetized me, and I'm getting paid for people commenting and liking, and it costs you $0. So I really want to appreciate everybody on the Facebook side who have been showing love and getting the name out there and sharing the page and having other people like it and supporting it, because you're paying me and you don't even realize you're doing it, and it means the world. And like I said, it costs you nothing. So supporting people or supporting social media brands and pages goes a lot further than you think it does by hitting like and sharing. I know it sounds repetitive, but it does truly help. So thank you once again, JS Michaels, everyone who tuned in today. We had some heart care reactions from Ryan, loves from Harris and Lindsay and Pat, and thumbs ups from Alan, Amber, and Lance. Thank you guys all so much. We'll see you guys next time. Here's some music from Billy Trey, but make sure, like I said, you check the links below to see how you can support the independent wrestling scene as well as myself and my guest. We'll see you next time.